In this world, astral power is a mysterious energy source, possessing a terrifying force that humans cannot touch. Therefore, witches who wield astral power have been oppressed by the Empire, leading to a brutal war between the two lands. About a year ago, Iska, the Empire's youngest apostle, released a witch from her cell and was rewarded by the Empire with a year of free government-provided meals. Now, Iska has been allowed to reintegrate into society by the Empire, but in return, he was stripped of his apostle title. The Empire assigns Iska a mission to atone for his past mistakes, to destroy an astral witch who possesses the pure bloodline of the Great Witch Nebulous, and is known as the Ice Witch. In a restaurant, a man named Jin informs the waitress, Nene, that Iska has returned, so she needs to go back to the front lines because both of them are the male protagonist's former teammates. After Iska was reintegrated into society, his two teammates, Nain and Jin, immediately shipped him to the front lines where conflicts with witches were occurring. Captain Mimimi also arrived shortly after. Thus, the Human Defense Special Forces 3rd Division reunited after Iska's year of government-provided meals. The group's mission this time is to confront the Ice Witch. She is currently the strongest astral witch of Nebulous, instilling terror in the Empire's warriors. However, the Empire also has Iska, who was once the youngest apostle in Imperial history. So it's like a fight between equals. Iska promises himself that he will capture the Ice Witch and be the one to end this meaningless war. The next morning, the team is taken to a weapon reactor, but there are very few guards because the number of people has significantly decreased due to witch attacks. Even if it were destroyed, a new reactor would be built only to be attacked by witches again, forming a cycle that has continued for hundreds of years. There is a regiment that has never faced an astral witch, so Iska's group must go to assist them. On their way, they are ambushed by the traps of the astral witches, but the entire team reacts in time. Just as they get out of the car, Jin is sneakily bitten by a witch, but Iska easily neutralizes the attack, surprising them greatly. At this moment, the witches hiding underground also emerge, putting Iska's group in a pincer movement, causing Captain Mi to panic immensely. But for Iska, these petty sorcerers are just for him to regain his fighting sense after a year of social isolation. Nene controls the vehicle to fire a volley of rockets, obscuring the enemy's vision. Meanwhile, Jin shoots paralyzing bullets towards the sorcerers, making them understand what it means to not meet KPIs. As for Iska, he possesses astonishing speed, striking down witches before they can even cast their spells. No sooner had the team defeated the witch army than a giant rock golem suddenly appears. Standing in front of them is Jin, the Ice Witch's subordinate. Iska advises Mimimi to take Jin and Nain back to call for reinforcements, while he will handle the rock golem. Iska then consecutively slices through the rock golem's body, making Jin suspect that he is a saint. Jin continues to cast magic to attack Iska, but with his superior speed, Iska easily controls her. While Iska is not paying attention, Jin tries the cicada shedding its skin trick, but this deception still doesn't trouble Iska. At this moment, he suddenly feels the temperature drop sharply, because the Ice Witch Alice has arrived. As soon as she appears, Alice freezes a part of the forest to limit Iska's speed. Jin warns Alice that Iska is very strong, because his sword can cut through magic. And from Jin's words, Iska also understands that while he was fighting here, the weapon reactor has been destroyed by Alice. Alice also wonders about Iska's true identity, because without the skill of a saint, there's no way to win against sin. And Iska declares to Alice that he is here to capture the Ice Witch, so a fight is inevitable. Alice unleashes a storm of ice swords to attack Iska, and Iska is slightly surprised by Alice's technique, so he is lightly wounded. Therefore, Iska has to use the awakened power of his sword body to fight Alice. Thanks to this, he manages to overcome the torrential sword rain. However, the power of the sword body still cannot penetrate the defensive ice layer created by Alice. Alice advises Iska to give up. No one will end this war. Iska's words inadvertently make Alice waver, causing her to lose some vigilance in the battle. Alice also has her own ideal of peace. She will defeat the Empire to create a peaceful land without war. While lecturing Iska, Alice accidentally slips and falls, and Iska catches her as a natural reflex. Thus, the cool demeanor Alice had maintained up until then is officially gone in Iska's eyes. The Empire's reinforcement troops also arrive in time, so Alice is forced to retreat. Before leaving, she threatens Isuka that he won't be so lucky next time. After Alice leaves, Isuka feels there is something special about Alice. Alice, at this moment, also can't stop thinking about the words Isuka uttered during their battle. So she decides to invite Jin to watch a play in a neutral city. The play makes Alice cry so much that her tissues are soaked. Fortunately, a kind gentleman behind her lends her new tissues. After the play ends, Alice offers to repay the gentleman behind her and discovers that it is Isuka, the person she was just fighting fiercely with yesterday. Going back a few hours, this morning Isuka wakes up with a tired face after his battle with the Ice Witch yesterday. Mi guesses that Isuka is suffering from PTSD after a long time without fighting, but in reality, it's because he's infatuated with someone. To help his junior feel better, Mimi gives Isuka a ticket to a play at the Hop Theatre in a neutral city. In the past, Isuka was given a sword by his master with the hope of restoring the world. And now he is being taken to the neutral city by Ni to watch a play. Isuka cannot focus on the play because the girl sitting above him is crying her eyes out. So he lends her his handkerchief. And just as the play ends, little Alice demands to deal with Isuka right away. But this is a neutral city, so she can't act rashly. Alice complains that Isuka sitting behind her makes her feel uncomfortable. But the uncomfortable one should be Isuka, because she keeps sobbing, preventing him from watching the play. Therefore, Alice reluctantly forgives Isuka one more time. She raises her vigilance to the highest level to see if he follows her. Then, both of them enter a restaurant. But there is only one table left, so Alice has to share it with the person who booked it first. Ironically, the person who booked the table first is Isuka, which shocks Alice so much that she chokes on her water, making Jean think that Isuka is following them both. But he had already booked the table here. And once again, Alice has to let it go. She believes this is also an opportunity to monitor a formidable enemy from the Empire. Then, not only do they look at the same menu, but they also order exactly the same dishes, making the waitress think they are on a date. Isuka and Alice both share a love for pasta, so they chat enthusiastically like a lid on a pot. Jean has to remind Alice to calm down because they are enemies, but she has her own way of eating pasta, which annoys both of them greatly. That night, Jean hopes Alice doesn't tell anyone about going out to eat with Isuka. Usually, Jean would report to the Queen, but this time she will temporarily overlook it. After all, he is a very dangerous Imperial soldier. Jin also advises Alice to throw away Isuka's handkerchief, but Alice believes it's all Jin's fault. Because Jin criticized Isuka's and Alice's way of eating pasta, they teamed up to argue with the maid. And this fated enemy's story prevents Isuka and Alice from sleeping soundly. In fact, in the past, Alice and Isuka accidentally met. At that time, a swarm of monsters attacked a train, so Isuka stepped forward to fight them. Just as his sword was damaged, Alice destroyed the monsters for Isuka, saving his life. The next morning, Team 3 has a rigorous training exercise that makes Mimi burst into tears. The three of them accidentally reunite with Ria, a special military advisor, after a year apart. The reason Risia is here is to support Mimi in the team's next mission. Furthermore, she also learns that Isuka has been having trouble sleeping lately. So, Ria gives Isuka a ticket to an art exhibition, because she's not very interested in art herself. Meanwhile, the Ice Princess is having a meeting with her mother, because she has heard that Alice fought someone with power equivalent to a saint, the strongest warriors of the Empire. It is rumored that 100 years ago, the ancestor fought 10,000 Imperial soldiers and still survived. The place where the mother and daughter are standing is her seal. However, the Empire does not know that the ancestor has a twin sister who is Nobilis I. So when the first died, the Empire rejoiced. And now, the ancestors' bonds are weakening. Alice's mother realized this when Alice fought Isuka. Astral power only reacts when the user is in danger, and the ancestors' astral power reacted when Alice encountered Isuka. This reminds Alice of the scene where Isuka's astral sword awakened, but she no longer has the opportunity to investigate because the Queen has forbidden her from going into battle from now on. This can be considered a vacation for Alice. Coupled with her recent difficulty sleeping, she decides to seek healing. To be more careful, Alice will no longer go to plays. But then they run into each other again at an art exhibition. Alice scolds Isuka for not protecting the Empire, and instead coming here to see an exhibition. But Isuka retorts that these are the Empire's works. But Alice believes that art has nothing to do with politics. So Isuka suggests Alice go to the museum together. But Alice refuses to go with an Imperial soldier, leading to them getting utterly lost. After a while of looking around and not seeing Alice, Isuka decides to look for her. However, this stubborn princess still refuses. Isuka's kindness because she is a princess of Nebulus and he is an Imperial swordsman. But Isuka believes that art has no borders. So they go to the museum together. They both like the same painting. They both like how the artist created that painting. But unfortunately, they are enemies on the battlefield. Afterwards, Alice buys Isuka water as a thank you for leading the way. This year, Isuka is 16 years old, and Alice is a year older than him, just like a certain online swordsman couple. After a while, Isuka dozes off on a wooden chair. He even leans on Alice, which surprises her slightly because they are enemies, and she could eliminate him right now. Conversely, if Isuka captures Alice, he could also restore his saintly position. After reuniting, Mimi's Team 3 has to focus on a lot of work, looking very tired. So Isuka gives everyone a bottle of soda. Isuka doesn't realize that he bought the same type of drink Alice gave everyone earlier. At this moment, Ria asks Isuka to go to the Imperial Senate immediately. The Empire's High Council has reviewed Isuka's report when he fought the Ice Witch. Although he couldn't protect the reactor, he successfully prevented the Ice Witch, proving that the Empire has enough power to confront her. This achievement is more than enough to restore Isuka's saintly position. But since he still bears a serious crime, the council decides to add a new condition for Isuka. He must capture the Ice Witch alive. That night, Isuka reminisces about the moments he spent with Alice. He decides to ask for leave from tomorrow's training to go to the neutral city to talk to her. And Mi will go with Isuka because she senses the tension in his voice. Returning to that afternoon, Alice not only spared Isuka's life but also called a car to take him back. She hopes he doesn't misunderstand because she is only repaying a favor. At this moment, Jean brings Isuka's file to Alice and learns that he was once the youngest saint in Imperial history, but had to eat government-provided meals before even going into battle just because he released an astral witch who was imprisoned in the Empire. This makes Alice even more curious about Isuka, so she orders Jin to investigate the identity of the person he released. Isuka's handkerchief is still kept by Alice to this day. Queen is also quite surprised to learn that Alice cares about an Imperial soldier. She deeply hates the Empire because they consider all witches evil. Therefore, destroying the Empire is her greatest wish. Even Imperial artists are no exception, because creating paintings about witch hunts is unacceptable. Yet Alice is still keeping a personal item of an Imperial soldier. And tomorrow, Alice also wants Jean to take her to the neutral city to find out Isuka's true intentions behind releasing the witch. The next morning, Mimi is very curious about who Isuka is meeting, but he says that they haven't actually made an appointment. He just has a feeling she will come today. There are a few things he needs to clarify. On the way, Isuka also accidentally sees giant seagulls waiting for Alice, and the two reunite in the city square. Then, Alice introduces herself to Mi, which utterly panics the captain. Alice doesn't understand why the two lands hate each other when there are peaceful cities like this. Here, she asks about Isuka's past, and he explains that the witch was just a child, but the Empire wants to capture all sorcerers and he doesn't like that. Alice thinks this is contradictory because Isuka wanted to capture Alice when they fought in the forest. But it's not contradictory. Isuka's goal has always been to end the war, but neither sovereign listens to him. So he wants to take a member of Nebulus royalty hostage to make the queen negotiate peace with the Empire. However, Alice believes that even if she were captured, her mother wouldn't care. Peace would be a pipe dream, because the people of Nebulus deeply resent the Empire. She also didn't know that among the barbaric Imperial soldiers, there was someone like Isuka, so she wants to recruit him to her side. Jin believes everyone will object, but if Isuka agrees, Alice will ensure all his rights if he leaves the Empire. At this moment, a strong gust of wind suddenly appears, accompanied by a crack in the sky, causing everyone to panic greatly. The ancestor suddenly appears from within the crack, surprising Alice slightly, and Isuka also guesses that the one who once plunged the Empire into a sea of fire is actually still alive. Mimi believes Alice intentionally summoned the ancestor here, even though Alice had no intention of doing so. As soon as she appears, the ancestor casts a spell to attack Isuka, creating a massive tremor. At this moment, the queen also discovers that the link between the ancestor and the astral energy source has disappeared, so she hopes that she will once again destroy the empire. Meanwhile, Mi faints after the ancestor's terrifyingly powerful attack. Isuka doesn't understand why the ancestor is attacking her own descendant, so Alice explains that this is the astral power's self-defense system. Alice admits that she has developed personal feelings for Isuka, but that is unacceptable for a princess, so she wants the two of them to resolve it privately here. But the foolish ancestor interferes. She asks the ancestor to stop the attack immediately, but she doesn't listen and attacks. Instead, Alice is attacked for daring to defy her. Fortunately, Jin summons the rock golem in time to shield the princess from the attack, but Jin also collapses after the blow. So, Alice creates a layer of ice to protect Jin. And Isuka wants Mimi, who has just woken up, to take Jin to the hospital and evacuate everyone. He and Alice will stop the ancestor. The ancestor also realizes that Isuka's swords are what awakened her, but that is not enough to defeat her. She casts a fire dragon to attack Isuka, but it is frozen by Alice and neutralized by Isuka's sword. So the ancestor decides to destroy Alice with pillars of fire, but Alice retaliates with ice walls. Alice cannot accept that the hero of Nebulous would attack her own descendant, and Isuka believes she is not fit to lead the witches. The ancestor might have been the hope of the sorcerers 100 years ago, but this era no longer needs her. The future that Alice and Isuka desire does not require the ancestor's destruction, so they hope she can go back to sleep for a few more 100 years. This makes the ancestor extremely angry, continuously summoning spells to attack both of them, forcing Alice to struggle defensively. The ancestor continues to create a storm, making Isuka drag Alice while defending. Alice wants him to let her go, but Isuka doesn't think so, because he feels they share the same thoughts about peace. Moreover, this is a neutral city, and most importantly, they have the same goal. Isuka's words re-energize Alice. She creates an ice platform with countless ice arrows attacking the ancestor in return. However, that is not enough to defeat the ancestor, so Alice is wounded by her immediately after. Meanwhile, Isuka is rushing towards the ancestor like a storm, and Alice creates steps for him to get close to her. The ancestor then unleashes a very powerful attack to stop Isuka, but with just a call from Alice, the ancestor's magic is neutralized by Alice's absolute defense. Taking that opportunity, Isuka cuts off the ancestor's wings, sending her back into the astral crack. When she awakens next time, the world will be a better place. After the battle, Isuka gives Alice an answer. He cannot go to Nebulous. This means they are still enemies, but he wants them to have a truce to enjoy today. Today, Team 3 goes to the casino to relax, but Isuka is the unluckiest person in the Empire, so he doesn't win anything, causing Mimi, the gambler, to go all in at the casino. Ria has assigned Team 3 a special mission for next week, but even Mimi doesn't know what it is. So she drags the whole team to the casino to earn money to buy the most advanced tank available. No matter what happens, the team can safely retreat. Truly a model captain, scouring the casino to take care of her subordinates. Coincidentally, today Jin also brings Alice here, because it's in the best entertainment district, perfect for the princess's vacation. In reality, Alice is not interested in gambling, and would prefer to go to the neutral city. But Jin doesn't want Alice to meet Isuka, not knowing that he is also here. Alice truly doesn't want to gamble, but Jin believes this is the day the Queen's victory smiles upon them. Alice feigns disinterest because she is busy choosing an auspicious date for her decisive battle with Isuka. She looks as if she's choosing a wedding date for the two of them. In just the first spin, Alice hits the jackpot, surprising everyone greatly. Nene tells everyone that the kind girl has a beautiful appearance like a bird sinking and fish drowning, making Isuka immediately think of Alice, but he assumes it couldn't be her. While Jean goes to call the manager, a curious crowd surrounds Alice, including Nene. Nene only wishes that Mimi had won so the whole team could have a new tank. Therefore, Alice decides to give Nene a bucket of money to compensate for the bucket Mimi just lost, because she has no shortage of money. On her way home, Alice happens to pass a fortune-telling shop and decides to go in. Alice wants to know when and where she will meet Isuka again, and the fortune teller tells her that the person is always very close to her, and that they are like a match made in heaven because they are connected by a very strong thread that no destiny can break. And just a few seconds after Alice leaves, it's Isuka's turn to enter the fortune-telling shop. Just like Alice, Isuka comes here to find her, and the fortune teller's predictions are exactly the same as what she told Alice. Meanwhile, Ria is having a meeting with the Imperial Council, and the council wants Ria to persuade Mimi to go to Fitek as a close friend. Then Ria also contacts Team 3 to inform them about this new mission. Speaking of VCH, this is the mysterious energy source that creates astral power. Currently, a new VCH is about to form, so if witches access it, a new Great Witch will be born, and Ria wants Mimi's team to approach the VCH to stop the witches. Alice is looking at Isuka's handkerchief when Zin arrives to deliver a message from her sister, Sispel, to Alice. A new Votek has formed, and the Empire has sent troops there. But the Duar family, one of the 3 royal families, deliberately did not report to the Queen, making Alice think that they want to keep the Votek for themselves. So the two immediately move to the Duar family's territory, and are greeted by someone, nicknamed the Masked Lord. Alice immediately asks Mask why he didn't report to the Queen, but Mask claims it's an underground magical current. There's nothing certain that it will become a Votek, and of course, he still sends troops to monitor it. But the reason the Duar family didn't report to the Queen is because the head of the family is busy with some matters, and had already left to report earlier. The next morning, Mimi's group arrives at the military encampment near the VCH, and it seems Mimi didn't report about the previous battle with the ancestor in the neutral city. At this moment, Mi reunites with another super kind friend, Nozomi. They were friends from their days as ordinary soldiers. The commander of the entire cause this time is the 8th Saint Nameless, with the Empire's most advanced optical camouflage armor. Nameless only makes 3 demands for this mission. First, don't let the VCH be stolen by witches. Second, destroy the Votek if they fail. And finally, just don't get in his way. Afterwards, everyone divides into multiple groups to focus on searching for the Fitek. Some groups suddenly lose communication, but there are no signs of a battle with witches. But Nameless doesn't bother sending people to look for the missing teens, because losing a few people doesn't matter, and they just need to focus on finding the Vatek, which Mimi finds very confusing. So Isuka decides to go find Nameless to clarify, because they were old colleagues anyway. Speaking of VCH, this is the mysterious energy source that creates astral power. Currently, a new VCH is about to form, so if witches access it, a new Great Witch will be born, and Ria wants Mimi's team to approach the VCH to stop the witches. Then Isuka goes to meet Nameless to ask a question. But he says that Isuka must regain his saintly position to have the right to speak to him. At least be a captain. So Mimi, as a captain, asks on behalf of Isuka why the commander isn't sending people to look for the missing teens. But Nameless doesn't offer any explanation. Meanwhile, Alice also decides to move to the valley with the Votek, making Jin think she's looking for Isuka. But Alice says Isuka won't be there and she will participate as princess of the L family. Afterwards, Alice and Jean step into the Forbidden area in the valley and discover that this is indeed Vtek. So Alice once again accuses the Duar family of trying to monopolize it. But Mask still defends himself by saying he just discovered it. At the same time, the daughter of the Duar family head, Kissing, is also present. Basically, Alice is Kissing's cousin, but she doesn't remember who Alice is. Mask wants Alice to entrust the protection of the Vtek to the Duar family, but Alice thinks the Imperial army won't stand for it. He says she can rest assured because Kissing is even stronger than Alice. But to Alice, this masked man is very suspicious. It seems he has some kind of conspiracy. Meanwhile, Mimi's group just received news that an astral energy source has been discovered beneath the base, indicating that an enemy force has infiltrated the base. However, the commander still orders the entire team to continue searching for the Votek, and Mimi luckily guesses the direction the Votek's energy is emitting from. Besides Mimi's group, Nozomi's group also discovers the Vtek light source, making her very happy. But Mimi learns that Nozomi is a witch planted by the sovereign side, and her mission is to capture all the Imperial soldiers. Then, They gradually shed their disguises, revealing their witch marks. Just as Nozomi attacks Mimi, Commander Nameless suddenly appears and strikes down 3 of Nozomi's servants. One of them decides to sacrifice himself so Nozomi can escape. This forces Nameless to use a piercing slash, but Isuka blocks it because it could endanger Mimi, and he is threatened by Nameless with government-provided meals. Nameless orders Isuka to continue searching for the VCH, while he will attack the enemy base. At the enemy base, Alice notices that this Vitek seems quite small, so at most it can only create a few sorcerers. At this moment, Nozomi returns to the base with an Imperial prisoner. Who is Mimi? Alice immediately recognizes Mimi as the girl who was with Isuka earlier, and before Mimi can even speak, she is knocked unconscious by Jean to cover their tracks. Capturing an Imperial captain makes Alice feel like she's hit the jackpot because she can use this opportunity to challenge Isuka to a solo fight. Even though she's going to meet her enemy, Alice is as happy as if she's going on a date, completely emptying her words. At this moment, countless rocket launches are heard from the Imperial base, making Isuka extremely worried, because Mimi could be in danger. Meanwhile, Alice and Jin, having just infiltrated the Imperial base, encounter Nameless, causing Jin to be lightly wounded. Alice put in the effort to come here, but didn't meet Isuka, and moreover, she got Jin involved, so she decides to vent her anger on Nameless. As soon as she finishes speaking, Nameless charges to attack Alice, but he is blocked by her invisible ice wall. Then he is retaliated against by Alice with a storm of ice swords. There's nothing certain that it will become a Votek, and of course, he still sends troops to monitor it. But the reason the Duar family didn't report to the Queen is because the head of the family is busy with some matters, and had already left to report earlier. But she not only fails to inflict damage, but is also attacked back by him. So Alice sends her sincerest apologies to Nameless for underestimating him. Now, she will start seriously. As soon as she finishes speaking, Alice creates an ice storm that freezes the entire Imperial base in the blink of an eye, and Nameless has to run away. But at this moment, she also discovers an explosion at the witch's base. Going back a few minutes, Isuka is struggling to defend against Kissing's incredibly annoying needles. She realizes that Isuka has power comparable to a saint, so she releases a rocket back towards Isuka, creating a massive explosion. But she didn't expect Isuka to still be alive and well after the terrifying attack. Isuka believes Kissing's fighting style endangers herself, but she doesn't care, and summons a tin dragon to continue attacking Isuka. Kissing's tin dragon destroys everything in its path, but to Isuka it's too simple an attack. He just needs to get close to Kissing with his speed, and knock her out with a series of sword strikes. However, Isuka is also bitten by the masked man from behind. Fortunately, Isuka reacts in time to avoid a fatal blow, but the masked man is only here to take Kissing away. Before leaving, he also advises Isuka to worry about me instead of caring, because he kicks her down to the VCH immediately after. At this moment, Alice just returns to the base and sees Isuka trying to save Mimi. Alice immediately jumps down to find Isuka. She will only save him on one condition. They must fight after returning to the surface. And even if he doesn't agree, Alice will still save him anyway. At the moment their hands touch, strange feelings suddenly appear in their hearts. Then, Alice summons ice blocks to lift them both up. But the VCH energy source unexpectedly reacts because a new witch has just been created. This makes Alice extremely angry because she finally found Isuka to fight. But she is stopped by that foolish energy. Meanwhile, Isuka and Mimi are also found by the other two. Immediately after, Isuka is reluctant to reveal how he survived the VTECH hole, but he feels he owes Alice his life. Inside the room, Alice is recalling the moment their hands touched but still affirms to Jin that she doesn't remember him. But when Jin suggests going to the neutral city to find Isuka, Alice is very excited, like she's going to meet a lover. Meanwhile, Mimi is apologizing to her juniors for causing so much trouble for the whole team, due to her carelessness. Ever since escaping the VCH hole, Mimi feels something strange in her left bicep, making Main think the captain is injured. At this moment, Rizia informs the entire team about the secret mission she mentioned earlier, to infiltrate the nebulous sovereign territory to capture the queen. Iska feels this is an impossible mission because to enter Nebulous, one must definitely have a magical mark. But Ria still has a way to infiltrate the sovereign territory, and everyone just needs to wait 3 days to find out what that way is. Meanwhile, Alice has been waiting for Iska in the neutral city for 3 days but hasn't met him. Jin advises Alice to go back because Iska might have drowned in the Vec hole, but she still believes he is alive, and they will meet again. This disappoints Jin quite a bit because Alice is designated to be the next queen, that Nebulous has internal conflicts between families, and Alice is having an unclear entanglement with an Imperial soldier, so Jin decides to cut off their destiny. At this moment, Mimi's shoulder is getting more and more uncomfortable, making Nain quite worried. So Mimi has to let her subordinate check, and discovers that a magical mark has formed on her bicep. Even Mimi knows nothing about this mark. She tries to explain that it's just a special insect bite, but everyone understands what's happening. Jin guesses that the main cause is the VCH because Mimi belongs to the 1% of the population chosen by it to become a witch. This shocks Mimi greatly. It seems she's hit an even bigger jackpot than the actual jackpot. But this means she will have to eat government-provided meals. Iska gives Mimi 2 choices. 1. She can turn herself in and get a reduced sentence. And 2. She will still be their captain, which deeply moves her. Although it might affect unrelated people, the group will never abandon Mimi. And Mimi decides she will never quit being their captain. Meanwhile, Alice is very sad because she waited for 3 continuous days but didn't meet Iska, but she still doesn't give up. As for Mimi, even if the whole team tries to hide it, there's no way to get past the Saints. Even if Mimi is a special case, she will still be executed. Therefore, Iska takes Mi to the neutral city to hide her from the eyes of the Saints. At the enemy base, Alice notices that this Vitek seems quite small, so at most it can only create a few sorcerers. At this moment, Nozomi returns to the base with an Imperial prisoner, who is Mimi. Alice immediately recognizes Mimi as the girl who was with Iska earlier, and before Mimi can even speak, she is knocked unconscious by Jean to cover their tracks. Scar doesn't know if the Empire had peace like this neutral city in the past, because they owned 60% of the territory. They were the ones who discovered astral power, but they also feared it. Feared it so much that they captured and imprisoned witches and called them devils. So Iska will try his best to end this war, so Mimi doesn't have to hide anymore. Mimi was deeply moved, and decided to go buy drinks for Iska. But what Iska worries about most now, is the mission to capture the Queen of Nebulous. Because all 8 holy apostles will never let the Queen survive. And it will only intensify the conflict between the 2 factions. Since it was too hot outside, Alice looked for shade and immediately found Iska sitting there looking sad, which made her very happy. She even told him that she had been looking for him for 3 days, that she had to calm down, because they were enemies. Alice refused to sit with Iska even though he invited her, because she believed Jin would reprimand her if she continued to sit with an enemy. But when Iska stood up, she still wouldn't sit with him, because she believed they should both sit together fairly. Oh. Girls are so easy to understand. Alice asked about Iska's sad appearance earlier, and learned that he had been having some awkward issues since that day. She hoped Iska could share with her, because she was very discreet. In a moment of carelessness, he drank Jin's drink and ended up slumped on the chair immediately after, because Jin had mixed sleeping pills into Iska's water. Alice scolded Jin, saying that this was a neutral city, yet Jin was playing dirty by ambushing Iska. Jin herself couldn't believe that Iska would drink anything she gave him. She feared that Iska would be wary of Alice and their conversation wouldn't be comfortable. She should have put poison in it instead of sleeping pills. Just the reason of the Sovereign putting someone to sleep would be enough to spark a new war. So Jean wanted to imprison Iska right when Mimi returned with the drinks and witnessed the entire incident. At this point, Alice had no intention of explaining, which made Mimi extremely angry and unleash her witch power, greatly surprising Alice. Mimi didn't know that Alice herself felt guilty for using such dirty tricks. On another side, the Emperor of the Empire also received information that Iska had been captured by the Ice Witch. However, after Alice left, she asked Jin not to bring Iska into the sovereign territory, because waiting for a saint, that only means death. Jin fully understood that, so she would take him to the nearest city belonging to the sovereign. Even though the Black Iron Heir was captured, the council still requested Ria to continue with the infiltration mission. However, the Emperor wanted Ria to focus on rescuing Iska. According to intelligence, Iska would be taken to the detention facility of someone with a history of opposing the Queen's Salinger. Thus, the Empire could attack that place to rescue Iska, and at the same time free Salinger, so he could continue causing chaos in Nebulous. The next day, Ria brings Team 3 a secret weapon that can help the entire team rescue Iska. It is a device that can emit astral energy and has the ability to create a fake magical mark that lasts for 1 week. The Empire's secret research hides very terrifying power. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Jin cleverly uses this device on Mimimi's left shoulder to hide her real magical mark. After crossing the border, Sovereign Ria gives the 3 of them the mission to go to Alakatos to find Iska. And once they find Iska, they are to cause havoc in the Sovereign territory, because other underground units will take this opportunity to infiltrate the Queen's palace. Meanwhile, Alice and Jean have also just arrived in the city of Alakatos. Alice takes advantage of Iska's unconsciousness to touch him, comparing whose skin is smoother, making her forget that they are enemies. At this moment, Jin suddenly breaks hard, causing Iska's body to lean on Alice, making her very embarrassed. And it seems Iska's drug resistance is very strong, so he wakes up after Alice's push. As soon as he wakes up, Iska looks very disappointed because the Princess of Nebulous would resort to such despicable tricks. So Alice has to explain that it's all Jin's fault, and Jean blames Iska for being careless against an enemy. On another side, Mimi's group has successfully passed the first checkpoint to enter the Sovereign territory. Alice and Jean decide to rest at a hotel in the city. Before getting out of the car, Jin reminds Iska that this is Nebulous Sovereign territory, so Iska shouldn't try to resist. Currently he is just the princess's prisoner. Even though he is an Imperial prisoner, Iska is allowed by Alice to stay in this spacious room, because she doesn't want rumors that the princess treats her prisoners badly, which Jin strongly opposes. Jin believes that all men are monsters, so Iska will jump on Alice while she's asleep. "Hey, what are you talking about, you little maid?" Just kidding, Alice will use the small room next door for Iska, leaving Jin to watch over him in this large room. At this moment, Mimi's group had also set foot in the city, but Alakatos has many prisons, so they didn't know which one to look in. So Ria guided the group to an alley where she was already waiting, surprising all 3 of them. And the first target Ria aimed for was the famous floating tower prison, or Lalugan. After Alice left, the atmosphere in the hotel between Iska and Jin became incredibly tense. Jin felt that Alice was very risky holding Iska here, because she realized he was Alice's greatest danger. As soon as she finished speaking, Jin deliberately injured herself, so she would have a legitimate reason for self-defense against an Imperial soldier. Then Jin also lunged to attack Iska, because he would become the biggest obstacle to Alice's goal of unifying the Empire. And if Iska sacrificed himself, his dream would come true. But Iska affirmed that it was not his dream. Alice, at this moment, was about to order their favorite pasta for dinner, but was afraid of being scolded. Iska was a prisoner now, so maybe she shouldn't be too kind to him. Lys stepped into the next room and saw Jin fighting Iska. And even without his sword, Iska could resist the maid. Then she asked the maid to let her join in, making Jin burst into tears. At this moment, Team 3 had infiltrated the tower prison, and Jin felt that Iska might not even be there, and perhaps the Empire was targeting something else. After the recent scuffle, Alice decided to handcuff Iska to her own hand, making Jin stop complaining. Even though she was busy guarding a prisoner, Alice looked as happy as if she were at a festival. But at this moment, Alice realized the problem. How would Iska take a bath and use the restroom? So she cursed him, calling him a pervert who had planned this in advance, even though he hadn't done anything at all. Alice ordered Jin to give her the key because this was an emergency that she had left without her noticing. Finally, Alice could take a bath, and the person watching Iska now was Jean. The maid decided she would imprison him here permanently. She also scolded Iska for not seizing the opportunity Alice gave him earlier. At this moment, Alice had just finished bathing, but she forgot that Iska was also in the room, so she was mortified and wanted to disappear into the ground. This caused Alice to inadvertently reveal a giant magical mark on her back. However, she still wanted to know Isuka's feelings about it. So Isuka told them both the story of how Mii had been turned into a witch. But he still respected her as a captain, and he would never fight for that foolish magical mark. However, Alice still wanted to know what Isuka thought of her beyond being a witch, and he said she was an opponent on the battlefield. This shocked Alice so much that she dropped her towel. But Isuka's answer resolved all her long-standing questions about their relationship. Scar wanted Alice to get dressed before continuing their conversation, which made her incredibly embarrassed. She even demanded Isuka take off his clothes to make it fair. Inside the tower prison, Risia surprisingly appears in the cell of the demon Salinger, who dared to oppose the nebulous government. Salinger found Ria to be an interesting girl for daring to speak to him so boldly. He also wanted to know how an Imperial person could enter here. And he learned that Risia came to help him escape on the condition that he assist the Empire in a large-scale invasion with the goal of capturing the Queen alive. Salinger found this to be rather bland, but he was also tired of living underground, so he decided to become the new king of Nebulous. That night, Isuka stood looking at the peaceful night view of the city, and Alice explained that those were prisons holding many criminals, not just witches. But the most dangerous person in Nebulous, the demon Salinger, was imprisoned in Olalugan Tower Prison, and this was the most secure place. The reason everyone called Salinger a demon was because he had attacked the previous queen, so he was considered a demon. But she didn't go deeper into the story just because she was afraid of Jin's reprimand, not knowing that she had been standing behind them both all this time. Jin came here to inform Alice that someone had infiltrated the border and directed suspicion towards Isuka, even though he hadn't done anything. At this moment, the alarm at Olalugan Tower Prison also sounded, but Mimi's group was temporarily safe, because Ria had just released the person known as Nebulous's most dangerous demon. As soon as he reintegrated into society, Salinger punched several holes in the walls, causing the alarm to sound. Risia also informed Mimi that Isuka was not here, because her initial intention was not to find him here. This made Jin suspect that Ria was using the three of them as bait, as the group was stuck here without any saint coming to rescue them. At this moment, Alice was also informed by Jean that Salinger was trying to escape. It was very likely that he would seek out the Queen, so Alice decided to stop him. Jin immediately stopped Alice because it was too dangerous. However, she refused because in this city, besides Alice, he almost had no opponents. An Imperial soldier like Isuka shouldn't have known this information. But Alice felt that telling him would make her feel more at ease. She really wanted to know if Isuka would come to her rescue if she was in danger. But before Isuka could clearly hear the question, Alice had already left. Afterwards, Alice sent Isuka another handkerchief to replace the one she had lost. If he didn't like it, he could leave it, but she hoped he would like and accept it. To find a way to escape, Jin decided to be the decoy for Nain and Mimi to escape. But Mimi thought this was too dangerous, so she would be the decoy because she was a witch anyway. Then Mimi pretended to be a newly escaped witch to attract the attention of the guards. And at the most dangerous moment, Jin made them understand what it felt like to not meet KP. At this moment, Alice and Jin had left, but Isuka couldn't escape because the handcuffs were still there. Isuka's phone suddenly rang, and on the other end was Mii's group, which surprised him greatly because they were inside sovereign territory. Jin announced that the group was trapped in the tower prison, and furthermore, the Ice Witch was also coming here, so he needed Isuka's help. Isuka suddenly remembered the handkerchief Alice gave him before she left, and indeed, inside it was the key that could help him escape, making him think he was an idiot. Why didn't he think of it sooner? On the way to the tower prison, Alice and Jean were suddenly attacked by the Imperial army, and it seemed they had caused a riot. Moreover, the demon Salinger had also escaped, making things incredibly difficult. Alice ordered Jin to hold Salinger back, so she could help the soldiers extinguish the fires first. Meanwhile, Isuka had just arrived at the tower prison, and quickly reunited with his teammates. However, Isuka decided to go inside for about 15 minutes and asked Mimi to evacuate the surrounding residents to the hotel. On the other hand, Jin had also encountered Salinger, and he sarcastically remarked that she was just an unknown nobody who dared to challenge him. Jin cursed Salinger, calling him a demon who had usurped countless astral energies, but couldn't surpass the royal bloodline. But he thought that a mere maid like Jean knew nothing at all. At this point, the maid immediately attacked Salinger, but couldn't make him budge. So Jean summoned a giant rock golem, which made him realize she was an earth sorceress. But Salinger only needed to touch the rock golem, and it turned into a pile of dirt. Not only did she fail to inflict any damage on Salinger, but Jean was also counterattacked by him using her own earth element, making her struggle to defend, because the astral energy he used was of royal blood. Despite being heavily wounded, Jin still charged to attack Salinger, resulting in him knocking her flat. Just as Salinger was about to deliver the finishing blow to Jin, Isuka suddenly appeared and neutralized the attack, surprising him greatly. Jin didn't understand why an Imperial soldier like Isuka would save her, so he explained that he had to do it to go home. If Isuka defeated this guy to help Alice, then Jean was not to stop him and his friends until they crossed the border. Salinger himself couldn't understand why an Imperial soldier was here, but it no longer mattered because he would crush him anyway. In the Fenebulus Palace, the sovereign's third princess, Sisbel, was being informed by the butler about the current situation at the tower prison. The demon Salinger had escaped with the help of an Imperial spy. One thing the butler was very concerned about was that Alice coincidentally was also there to command the army, which surprised Sisbel quite a bit because she was Alice's younger sister. Salinger was quite surprised by Isuka's strength because he had used the power of sound spirits to attack him. But Isuka cut through the sound itself, which greatly astonished him because this was no longer the reflex of a normal human. Salinger's astral spirit was a reflection that could abduct other astrals and use their abilities. Afterwards, Isuka easily dodged Salinger's attack and counterattacked, giving him a fright. Isuka continued to use his speed to approach Salinger. If not for Jin's warning, he would have fallen into Salinger's trap early. Although he hated Isuka, Jin admitted that his presence here was a stroke of luck. Salinger showed great satisfaction because he had only used a little power, and they were already struggling like this. And now Salinger would show them the true power of the astral spirit. On another side, Alice had finished helping the soldiers extinguish the fires, but she was suddenly attacked by Namales. However, he came here not to fight Alice, but only to remind her that she was in trouble. And now he would leave because his mission would end when Salinger arrived. At this moment, Alice also discovered Salinger high up with the person she hoped would come. Salinger unexpectedly combined 4 astral elements to create a very special attack, because the more Isuka tried to slash it, the more the flame would spread and engulf him. Here, Salinger finally revealed the reason he collected astral spirits: to create a combination between humans and spirits. If successful, he would transcend the definition of an ordinary king and gain power equal to the ancestor. He also advised them to give up, because that swordsman had already kicked the bucket. But Isuka surprisingly stood on the magic, surprising Salinger like crazy. Isuka was able to survive the recent attack thanks to his second sword. The black blade could cut through magic, and the white blade could restore that magic. Isuka was so determined to defeat Salinger because Alice had placed her trust in him, so he couldn't disappoint her. Salinger used 2 elements, wind and lightning, to attack Isuka, but Jin used her last bit of strength to create a reverberating pillar for him. This enraged Salinger. He decided to destroy Jin with lightning, but Alice managed to freeze his lightning in time. Taking that opportunity, Isuka charged towards Salinger like a storm. He was so desperate that he created 2 swords out of magic to fight Isuka, even though he knew Isuka could cut through magic. Then, he fled underground to preserve his honor as a king. After the battle, Alice kindly asked about Jin's injuries, but the maid just pretended to be perfectly fine. Alice proceeded to re-imprison the prisoners and ensured Isuka's group safe retreat from sovereign territory. Isuka should have been able to escape when he got out of the handcuffs. However, he returned to keep his promise to Alice, which made her very happy. But Jin still didn't acknowledge Isuka's help because he had to come here to meet the conditions for exchange. Who doesn't know she likes him, Grandma? In fact, the Namales who fought Alice earlier was Rhea. Because her camouflage suit was too tight, she could only show off for a few seconds. Thanks to Rhea's interference, Namales was able to order the remaining teams to approach the Queen's palace. Rhea would report to the Emperor immediately, and it seemed the Emperor was very interested in Isuka. Currently, Isuka has safely left the sovereign border with his teammates. Isuka's body was exhausted after fighting Salinger, and he blamed everything on Alice. but he still had another mission ahead, to find a way to help me after the group returned to the Empire. That night, Jin was praised by Alice, but the maid felt she didn't deserve it, which made Alice mention Isuka, because the two had officially declared themselves opponents. Yes, opponents indeed. Although she hated Isuka, Jin admitted that he was a respectable warrior, but she still forbade Alice from saying his name, otherwise she would tell the queen. Their conversation was overheard by Alice's younger sister, Sisbel, and she realized the Imperial soldier who was entangled with her sister happened to be the kind soldier who freed her all those years ago. Back at the Imperial Palace, Rhea and Namalise were reporting the entire incident to the Emperor, but he didn't care at all, because the Emperor discovered a very interesting story. A witch princess from the witch faction had fallen in love with an Imperial swordsman. Sisbel woke up in her small room after a nightmare, and when she encountered her queen at the palace, Sisbel coldly left. However, Sisbel was also summoned to the palace by the queen, immediately after to order Sisbel to find out if Ansamira was cooperating with the Empire. She also allowed Sisbel to use her personal guard. However, she hoped her mother would keep them to protect herself. Although they had returned to the Empire, the council still closely monitored Isuka's group, because they wanted to ensure the magical mark would disappear after a week, which made Mimimi very sad because her mark wouldn't disappear. At this moment, Rhea brought a medical staff member from headquarters named Michia Ella. She criticized Rhea for making Mimi's group work too much, which startled everyone. So Michia Ella ordered everyone to take a mandatory rest and not accept any missions for 60 days. That meant the magical mark inspection schedule would be postponed. If another team had done one of Isuka's 3 missions, they would surely have been dead already. So the council compensated the whole team with a 60-day vacation. Mimimi could use this time to find a solution, but if she was careless, the Empire would discover her immediately. So Nain suggested the whole team go on vacation to an island nation far from the Empire to temporarily avoid their watchful eyes. After a period of neglecting her work of finding a boyfriend, Alice was greeted by a huge pile of documents. She felt she needed something entertaining, because for the past few days she had been helping her mother with a lot of work. Jean felt that Alice had already had enough entertainment, which made the princess recall the moments she spent with Isuka. At this moment, the eldest sister Elsha had returned after her campaign. On the way to welcome her back, Alice accidentally met Sisbel, but she didn't want to go with Alice, which made Alice very confused. For the past few days, Jean felt that Sisbel was like a different person, because the ministers were discussing who would be the successor, so Alice just wanted to leave. Currently, too many elite sorcerers are concentrated in the central province, so the queen has distributed them throughout the country, and Sisbel has been assigned by her to an independent nation in the east. Sisbel chose only one personal guard to accompany her, which was Butler Swat. Through her dream the other day, Sisbel learned that an underground force was targeting the queen, but she didn't tell anyone because she only trusted Butler SW. After Sisbel left, Mask entered a room, and the person inside was the Grand Princess Elsha. Elsha hoped that all 3 royal families would unite against the Imperial invasion, because she knew that someone in the royal family was colluding with the Empire. Even someone as intelligent as Elsha didn't know how, which made Mask very curious about the person the princess was referring to. Mimimi's group has arrived at the island nation of Ansamira, where there are rumors that this country is secretly colluding with the Empire and making a lot of money from resort ecological areas. Even though they have to rack their brains to find a way to remove the magical mark for Mimi, she is very keen on having fun, which annoys Isuka. As soon as they got into the sea, 2 beauties presented 2 swimsuits for the 2 guys to admire. After an afternoon of fun, Mimimi was so tired that she had to ask Jin to carry her back, while Nene would go buy dinner at the supermarket. At this moment, Isuka accidentally bumps into Sisbel, and they both immediately recognize each other. However, before Isuka could say anything to Sisbel, she left due to Nene's appearance. Sisbel herself couldn't believe that fate had brought them together again, and she also informed the butler that she had found the night of her dreams. Then she used her astral ability to recreate Isuka's image from the afternoon to find his whereabouts. Meanwhile, Alice was extremely overworked with piles of documents. She had just taken a short break when her mother led her to a place. Her mother took Alice to her younger sister Sisbel's room, because lately, she felt that politicians didn't trust Sisbel much. Because the girl constantly locked herself in her room, she decided to take Alice to check what Sisbel did every day in there. After entering the room, all three immediately split up to look for clues. And Alice found a newspaper talking about Iska's government-provided meals, making her realize that her sister was secretly investigating Iska, which worried her greatly. To this moment, Sisbel had found the hotel where Iska was staying. It was an ordinary hotel not suitable for an Imperial soldier's vacation. With her abilities, Sisbel easily found the room Iska was in. However, she was immediately subdued by Iska. And when they both recognized each other, Sisbel invited Iska to visit Nebulous sovereign territory. Alice was very worried at this moment, fearing that Sisbel had learned about the relationship between her and Iska. But Jin advised the princess not to worry too much because Sisbel's spirit could only observe within 300 meters. There's also a possibility that she suspects Alice and the Empire have been in contact. In the hotel, Sisbel apologizes to Iska for breaking into his room, and also thanks Iska for not having the chance to speak earlier. Afterwards, Sisbel also gives Iska a bracelet, but he feels he doesn't deserve it. She thinks Iska has lost his honor to free her, so she also wants to repay Iska and more. But Sisbel only dares to say that she is a royal attendant. However, Iska still suspects Sisbel's identity, because if she were a royal family member, she would have many subordinates, and then he would know that she doesn't trust anyone. And currently, Sisbel's mood is not very good, so she asks to leave first. After a while of searching, Jean asked the Queen for permission for Alice to meet Sisbel, because it would be easier for the two sisters to talk to each other. And she was granted permission. Alice will go to Samira to find out what her sister's true intentions are. At this moment, the Empire also received intelligence about a pure-blooded witch being in an independent nation, so the Empire will conduct a test of their latest witch-hunting weapon. The group's breakfast today is a BBQ party, which makes Mimi very happy. She shares her joy with Iska, but he is busy thinking about something else and doesn't pay much attention. Meanwhile, Elsha also reveals to Mask that the one trying to contact the Empire is her younger sister. Elsha tells Mask this because if her sister were to betray the Sovereign, she would be unable to take action, so she wants Mask to stop it. Therefore, Mask decides to investigate the truth behind it on behalf of the princess. This is Alice's first trip without Jin's service. Absolutely. Here is the English translation of the text you provided. At that moment, the entire group unexpectedly collided with a monster. So, Alice went down to investigate and found that a machine was approaching the city where Sisbel was. After the meeting with Sisbel yesterday, Iska decided to move to a hotel far from the city center to avoid a repeat of the incident. At this point, the group still hadn't found a way to undo Mimi's magical mark, which made her quite worried. Jin suggested that the three of them could go to the central market because, as an independent nation, they would have goods from both sides. This immediately made Nain think of the stickers that helped Nozo's group infiltrate the Empire previously. After arriving at the new place, Iska told everyone to go in first, while he would go exchange money for tomorrow. And Jin noticed this. As soon as he left the hotel, Iska met Sisbel. If changing hotels didn't help him escape her, his only option was to find a place to resolve their situation. In a secluded spot, Sisbel told Iska about her ability. She could review the past like video clips. Furthermore, Sisbel admitted that she had lied to Iska yesterday, because she was one of the 3 heirs to the throne of Nebulous, which greatly surprised him. But he still couldn't understand why Sisbel wanted him to come to the sovereign territory so badly. She explained that her mother, the Queen, was being targeted by someone of royal blood, and if the Queen disappeared, a full-scale war with the Empire was sure to happen. Sisbel knew about this plan through her spirit. However, she couldn't trust anyone, so she sought Iska's help. If Iska protected Sisbel, and she could stop the person targeting the Queen, then the war between the two empires wouldn't occur. She didn't ask Iska to betray the Empire, but she wanted them both to be able to change the future together. Meanwhile, Alice had just arrived in the city when she received news of Sisbel's disappearance from Butler Swat. And at this moment, Iska agreed to Sisbel's request because he didn't want a full-scale war between the two nations. But he couldn't go with her. This was because they were born in 2 different countries. Moreover, Iska's goal was to negotiate peace, not to prevent a full-scale war. And most importantly, that was the reason he fought. Isuka also hoped Sisbel could trust someone from the sovereign side. But Mask appeared and interrupted them both. Mask was extremely disappointed that the Queen's daughter was contacting an Imperial soldier. He pulled out evidence that Sisbel couldn't explain, because what Mask needed was anything that would benefit Doa in the election. Seeing Sisbel try to resist, Mask ordered his subordinates to pursue her, which confused Isuka. Weren't they on the same side? However, before Sisbel could run far, she was stopped by the Empire's most advanced witch-hunting machine, surprising both Isuka and Mask with the appearance of this uninvited guest. Mask ordered his subordinates to try and capture Sisbel first, while he would block Isuka in the sovereign territory. Nobilis would label anyone who even spoke to an Imperial person as a traitor. Sisbel would still be captured, and Mask would stop Isuka. Fortunately, Jin's group appeared just in time to rescue Isuka. And Mimi also recognized that was the brat who had turned her into a witch. He also sent a warm greeting to Mimi. However, there was no time for pleasantries because in front of them was the object, the Empire's most advanced machine. It had scanned 6 people with astral power and would proceed to hunt them all down, including Mimi. Mask ordered his subordinates to capture Sisbel first, but the subordinates were easily defeated by the object, and it prioritized capturing the pure-blooded Sisbel. Mask tried to join the fight but was stopped by Jin, which confused him greatly. Just the fact that he had kicked Mimi into a ditch was enough for Jin to want to beat him to a pulp. Mask's remaining subordinates suddenly attacked both of them with fireballs and obscured their vision with fog, because the losing side would be responsible for this battle. But the subordinates were easily defeated by the object, and it prioritized capturing the pure-blooded Sisbel. Mask tried to join the fight, but was stopped by Jin, which confused him greatly. Just the fact that he had kicked Mimi into a ditch was enough for Jin to want to beat him to a pulp. Mask's remaining subordinates suddenly attacked both of them with fireballs and obscured their vision with fog, because the losing side would be responsible for this battle. Meanwhile, Isuka had to protect Sisbel while also buying time, so Nain wouldn't allow the object to send data identifying Mimi as a witch to the Empire. However, his sword could only cut through magic, not the object's incredibly tough metal. Despite this, Isuka bravely protected Sisbel, which confused her, because Isuka also had many things he wanted to say to her, but he couldn't before this idiot interrupted. This made Sisbel feel that if he kept being so kind, she would eventually fall for him. Isuka also bought enough time for Nain to launch an attack directly at the object's vital components. Meanwhile, Jin was fighting Mask hand-to-hand, and he didn't know about Mask's ability to teleport objects, so he was injured, but he also managed to give him a lead bullet. Fortunately, Jin aimed directly at Mask's voice recorder, destroying the only evidence to incriminate Sisbel. This greatly angered Mask. He decided to drown them both in a sea of fire using fire magic. However, they couldn't cast magic because Mimi's wind spirit had the ability to nullify all types of magic. And Jin also destroyed Mask's precious aristocratic mask, causing him to leave in frustration. Back with Isuka, although he had successfully destroyed the object's energy core, it still had a secondary power source. More specifically, the energy source the object used was actually astral energy, making it incredibly dangerous. Immediately after, it attacked Isuka, gathering energy to attack him, but he fortunately escaped the attack. However, the object could regenerate very quickly, and its defense system also automatically upgraded to counter Nani's attacks. So Isuka ordered Nene to reunite with Mimi to evacuate the civilians so he could handle this. Then he charged towards the object, but it redirected its defensive energy layer to attack Isuka, and even if he could get close, he had no way to pierce this heavy armor. Just as the object was about to unleash its attack on Isuka, Sisbel unexpectedly recreated a past sandstorm to block its vision. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Isuka plunged his sword straight in, destroying the object's energy core and turning it into a pile of scrap metal. However, when the object's operation failed, it ejected another astral core from inside, creating a monster called Catalic. And as soon as it appeared, it used Sisbel as energy. Isuka tried to approach Catalic's core, but this monster could not only fly, but was also much more agile than the pile of scrap metal. In just a moment, he was completely overwhelmed. At this moment, Alice appeared just in time to relieve Iska, which greatly surprised him, and she also didn't understand why Iska was here. Once again, the pair of sworn enemies fought together. With Alice's help, Iska was like a tiger with wings. But at the last moment, Katalik unexpectedly broke free from Alice's control, making her realize it was like an astral spirit. Then it unleashed an incredibly powerful attack, forcing Alice to use a layer of ice flowers to defend against it. Katalik spewed out many strange languages of astral spirits, making both of them unable to understand what it was saying. Alice really wanted to fight Iska, but now was not the time. This was not the future they were aiming for, so she hoped they would cooperate. So, was it every man for himself until now? Then they both used their own power to pierce through the magical storm and get in front of Katalik. There, Alice used her signature sword rain technique, and Iska awakened his white blade, creating an incredibly powerful combined attack that vaporized Katalik in an instant, and simultaneously rescued Sispel. People say, a harmonious couple can move mountains, and this is it. And the Empire also received news that the Black Steel Heir personally destroyed the object. After the battle, Alice and Iska simultaneously thanked each other, making the little girl's sons extremely shy. Sispel had just woken up to see her Rain brother and sister arguing, so she asked about their relationship. Iska intended to explain, but Alice said she didn't know him. Iska also played along with Alice, which made Sispel very happy because Iska was her dream prince, making Alice visibly jealous. Just then, Mimi's group returned, so Iska bid farewell to the two sisters to reunite with everyone. Meanwhile, Ria was quite excited because of the experiment of the 8 great apostles. Those who secretly controlled the Empire were crushed by Iska. Currently, the Emperor of the Empire has gone out to meet someone, and he will soon know about this. At this moment, Salinger has escaped from the Sovereign Prison. He was enjoying the fresh air of the world when he accidentally encountered the Emperor of the Empire, making him overjoyed. At the Royal Palace, the Queen summoned Elsha because she knew that Elsha was the one who had leaked information about Sispel. She had no idea that Elsha was the one secretly trying to destroy the nebulous royal family from behind. Meanwhile, the unfortunate couple had a conversation after what had happened. Alice hoped Iska could pretend not to know her when he met people from the Sovereign Territory. Iska didn't understand why Alice liked to keep secrets so much, and she said she didn't like it. They both had certain feelings for each other, but unfortunately, they were still enemies on the battlefield. Chapter 1 of Season 2 opens with Alice wanting to take Sispel back to the Sovereign Territory because it was too dangerous, but the girl refused because she had a talented bodyguard, making her sister mistakenly think it was the butler. Although she wouldn't go back to their homeland with her sister, Sispel still asked Alice to send a letter to the Queen, and declared that they would be rivals both in the succession war and in making Iska her guardian. At this point, Alice finally realized that the new bodyguard Sispel had just mentioned was none other than Iska. At this time, news of Iska's group's battle with the most advanced witch-hunting machine was also front-page news, and Iska felt partly to blame, even though he had done nothing wrong. And Jin didn't believe that Iska and Sispel meeting in this city was a coincidence. He wanted his friend to immediately report any problems to the whole group, rather than hiding them as he did the other day. Meanwhile, the Queen was reprimanding Grand Princess Elsha, but the woman still calmly treated it as a joke. She had secretly investigated in an independent nation, but didn't understand why the Zoa family had this information, because the 3 royal families of Nebulis were not necessarily united. If the Hydra family always supported the queens from behind like strategists, the Zoa family fought the Empire for generations. However, the Zoa family followed an extremist ideology wanting to completely destroy the Empire. Moreover, the Zoa family had a less than good relationship with the Queen, so she believed that a princess of the Lu family would never reveal confidential information about Sispel to the Zoa clan. The Queen's words only made Elsha laugh louder, thinking the person in front of her played the role of a good queen better than she thought. After that, Elsha used magic to return the Queen to her true form, which was a child, but the real Queen also appeared immediately after. This was just a small test to check if Elsha was being impersonated. Just then, Alice unexpectedly returned to the palace to report on Sispel's current situation. At the hotel, Nain and Mimi had just finished bathing when little Sisbel unexpectedly appeared and snatched the patch covering Mimi's magical mark. Sisbel thought the Empire's patch leaked too much astral energy, so she gave Mimi a patch that helped her conceal it better, greatly surprising both of them. After Alice returned, Elsha asked to leave first because the Queen was already suspecting her of leaking information about Sisbel. When reading her daughter's letter, the Queen realized that the situation was now extremely unfavorable because the Zoa family suspected Sisbel of having a relationship with the Empire and would seize that opportunity to aim for the throne. And in the letter, Sisbel also told her that she had reunited with the Imperial soldier who had rescued her. So she asked if Alice had any information, but she hastily denied knowing anything. Even Jin was speechless at Alice's blatant lie. That evening, Sisbel invited Iska's group to meet at a cafe. There, Jin refused to sit because she was an enemy. Only when Sisbel provided useful information would Jin agree to sit down. However, Sisbel wanted the group to escort her back to the Nebulous Palace and defeat the Astral Witches along the way, which greatly surprised the entire group. And of course, Jin refused such an unreasonable request. But Sisbel had also grasped Iska's group's weakness, which was Mimi. As long as everyone agreed to protect her, she would provide the Nebula patch to hide Mimi's witch identity. Moreover, the fact that Imperial soldiers confronting witches was not considered betrayal, so the group decided to make a pact with Sisbel. But Jin still wanted to know why Sisbel was being targeted by witches, and she explained that she was returning to the palace to prevent a full-scale war between the Empire and the Sovereign Territory. Sisbel knew there was a traitor within the royal family, and Mask was also a suspect, so she had to return to investigate, and furthermore, she used her status as a royal confidant to assure everyone. After hearing Alice's report, the Queen sent reinforcements to protect Sisbel, but Alice was still worried about Sisbel. Specifically, that her younger sister was taking this opportunity to do something shady with Iska. Just as Alice feared, Sisbel was clinging to Iska like a shadow, making both Mimi and Nain extremely annoyed. Although Mimi and Nain kept scolding her, she felt quite at ease now that her teammates weren't just the butler. Thanks to this, Mimi and Nain finally left her alone. But Iska still made it clear that when the war ended, their relationship would also end, and they would become enemies on the battlefield again. And little Sisbel just wanted to have the happiest moments during her time with Iska. After a day of travel, the group stopped at a small roadside town. Sisbel quickly went to eat with Iska, but Iska let her choose because he was just a bodyguard. Their intimate moment made Nain and Mimi extremely jealous. If it weren't for the mission, they would have beaten that girl to a pulp. Sisbel decided to take her Rain brother to eat her favorite dish, and Iska guessed it was pasta based on Alice's preferences, which made her very happy and reminded him of the Ice Princess. Meanwhile, Alice was getting ready for bed when a guest came to visit whom she couldn't refuse because it was Mask. He came to inform Alice that Sisbel would betray them, so Mask invited Alice to go look for Sisbel together. With Sisbel present, Iska's group passed through the Sovereign Territory very easily. This was the second time the group had visited the Sovereign Territory, so Iska noticed that the culture here had quite a few similarities with the Empire. This was because 100 years ago, Nebulous was founded by an astral witch who had escaped from the Empire. And the biggest and only difference between the two nations was that the people here could all use astral power. Currently, there were many patrols outside, which made Iska think they were pursuing infiltrators. But no, they were pursuing the demon Salinger, which surprised him quite a bit. A few weeks ago, Iska had a battle with Salinger, and saw with his own eyes him returning to prison. Ignoring that, the problem the group now faced was how to get through the central districts to reach the palace. That was the group's real battlefield. Alice was bathing when she received news that Sisbel had returned to the border, which greatly surprised her. But she only received information that the girl was with 4 other bodyguards, and it seemed they were just mercenaries. So Jin really wanted Alice to go there to protect Sisbel, because tomorrow Mask would attend the bloodline meeting with the Queen. Alice was supposed to attend that meeting too, but her sister had taken her slot, so she didn't need to go. At this moment, Sisbel also learned that they knew about her secret return to the Sovereign Territory. The reason Sisbel didn't return with Alice was because she still suspected Alice and Elsha might be traitors. So to protect the queen and this country, she wouldn't hesitate to charm Iska. But Iska brought Sispel an incredibly light feeling whenever he was around. She wished life would be truly joyful if Iska stayed by her side forever, as he was now. This morning, the butler had gone ahead to scout, and would soon meet the queen the day after tomorrow. During that time, the group would take advantage of the opportunity to hide in this small town, and also plan to capture the assassin group sent here. However, the Zoa family already knew Iska's face, so Nain hoped he could wear glasses, which would both disguise him and make him look more handsome and bright. At this moment, Alice and Jin were also on the train, and Jin thought it was very likely that Sispel would be hiding in the town they were heading to. But Alice wasn't so sure because the girl kept locking herself in her room all day, so she didn't know much about Sispel's personality. So Jin hoped Alice could activate her lucky innate ability. The innate ability that had helped her accidentally meet Iska so many times, and it was about to be activated again. Alice suggested they both go to the station's drink counter for refreshments, and there she ordered a special drink that matched a certain guy. No need to say who it was. In episode 2, Iska immediately recognized Alice, but he didn't recognize the person next to her, which greatly angered Jin. Alice was immediately charmed by Iska's strong appearance, but she couldn't overlook the fact that he dared to come here to carry out an Imperial mission. So Iska had to explain that he wasn't doing that kind of mission, but saying he was protecting Sispel wasn't easy either. Just then, the 2 bodyguards sent to protect Sispel also appeared, so Alice had to lie that Iska was just asking for directions. And those 2 idiots actually believed it. Afterwards, Alice went looking for Iska, and she realized he probably had another teammate, who was Captain Mimi. They both realized Iska was waiting for someone, but he was actually waiting for Sispel, which made Alice extremely annoyed, so she immediately chased after the 2 of them. On the way, Iska and Sispel continuously had intimate gestures, which made Alice very agitated. A sharp pain in her chest along with a flushed face made Jin wonder. Little Sispel even casually wiped the excess cream from Iska's cheek with her hand, and then put it in her mouth. And now Alice realized why that girl dared to declare war on her before, so she decided to rush back and fight Sispel. Fortunately, if Jin hadn't stopped Alice's fiery head in time, a genetic battle would have broken out. At this moment, Jin noticed that Alice's mental state was extremely unstable, so the maid asked the princess for permission to follow Iska. Therefore, Jin appeared in front of the lovers to warn Sispel that she was surrounded by enemies, and that the queen had ordered Alice to come here to protect her. But the girl said she didn't need protection from her sister. Taking this opportunity, Iska also explained to Jin that he was only helping Sispel because of Captain Mimi. Meanwhile, a curious crowd was tightly packed around an eatery, admiring a very handsome guy, not knowing that he was Salinger, the demon of Nebulous, and that Emperor Doom had given him a pile of nonsense papers. After taking Sispel home, Iska returned to talk to Jin. He wanted to quickly finish the escort mission to receive the reward and leave this place. The maid warned Iska that if this matter leaked out, Alice would have no choice but to turn a blind eye, which made him a little sad. But if the Imperial soldier accompanying Sispel wasn't Iska, Jin would never have believed it. This meant he had gained Alice's trust, but Alice still wanted Iska to explain it herself. And before going inside, Jin warned Iska to choose his words carefully, because Alice's mood was very bad right now. It was very likely that Iska would become a scapegoat for the little princess to vent her anger. Iska stepped inside and noticed that the room had been frozen by Alice's negative emotions. However, she didn't call Iska for the mission to protect Sispel, but wanted him to explain why the 2 of them were walking on the street. Although Iska said this was also part of the job and apologized if he had accidentally hurt Alice, she refused to accept it because he not only didn't care about her, but also casually held Sispel's hand in the street. This made Alice feel betrayed. Iska had promised that his life belonged to Alice, but now he was listening to Sispel, so Alice couldn't accept it. Just admit you're jealous. But if Iska stopped escorting Sispel and asked Alice for the ceiling patch, she wouldn't give it to him because that would be like handing a spear to the enemy, which confused Iska greatly. Despite being extremely angry, for some reason, whenever Alice saw Iska, she felt better. By the way, the person Alice was angry with wasn't Iska, but that little Sispel who dared to snatch her boyfriend. I mean, her rival. The reason Alice called Iska here was for him to be a witness. Alice believed that as the second princess, she had the right to judge a younger princess, even though that law hadn't even been created yet. So Alice would verify what Sisbel had done with Iska as his sworn enemy. Yes, a very good reason, Grandma. As soon as she finished speaking, Alice jumped down and grabbed Iska's hand, then asked if they had ever held hands like this before, surprising him. Just by looking, one could tell how they had held hands, but Alice made Iska reenact it seriously, making him dutifully comply. Alice reprimanded Sisbel for being improper for daring to link arms with an Imperial soldier, even though she was doing the same thing with Iska. Furthermore, Alice pressed so close to Iska, exceeding the pick-serve level, that Iska felt embarrassed for her. He advised Alice to let go to calm down, but Alice refused because she believed she was just imitating Sisbel's feelings. So, is this imitating? The atmosphere they created at this moment was so hot that the ice layers in the room immediately melted. Fortunately, Jin appeared just in time, breaking the awkwardness between the two. Jin feared that Iska would harm Alice, but the princess scolded her, saying that they were at a critical moment. What critical moment? Then the maid quickly checked Alice's temperature and found she had a fever, then turned to scold Iska for just standing there watching Alice with a fever and doing nothing, even though she was the one who called him here, and Alice's body heat was still on Iska's sleeve, making him extremely flustered. Meanwhile, Elsha was praising the queen, saying that she had taken advantage of the Zoa family attending the conference to send Alice to protect Sisbel. Just as everyone was about to leave the palace, the queen was unexpectedly attacked by a mysterious assailant. Fortunately, she reacted in time to protect everyone, but Elsha was unfortunately hit. The guards immediately investigated the surrounding areas, but found no traces. However, not only Elsha but also the guards heard a voice before the explosion, which was Mask's voice. Just then, Mask also appeared here to assess the situation, and the queen accused him of being the mastermind behind the recent ambush, which confused Mask greatly. Therefore, Mask was arrested immediately after, and the queen herself would interrogate the Zoa family. At this moment, Lord Talisman, the head of the Hydra family, also appeared here, and Talisman hoped Her Majesty the Queen could rest first, and leave the investigation of the Zoa family to him. Elsha also agreed with the head of the Hydra family, so the Queen reluctantly entrusted this task to them. However, the Queen was still half believing that Mask was the culprit. Even if there were disagreements, Mask would not attack so overtly. The Queen hoped Alice could safely bring Sisbel back to the palace, at which point, with Sisbel's abilities, the truth would be revealed. In the Empire, the 8 great apostles were praising Rhea for her research achievements recently. They had also sent 12 elite army teams to the border checkpoint, and 10 teams had successfully infiltrated. At this time, news of the Nebulous Queen being attacked also reached the Empire. However, this was not done by the Imperial faction. Rather, among the Queen's descendants, someone was dissatisfied with the current government and created this attack. This also meant that person could form an alliance with the Empire. And to repay Rhea's efforts, the 8 great apostles revealed that the mastermind behind the attack was a pure-blooded Subject X, taking advantage of the chaos in Nebulis sovereign territory. The apostles mobilized all saints, including those who were currently serving as guards under the Emperor, to attack Nebulis sovereign territory with the goal of capturing the Queen and pure-blooded witch variants, signaling a large-scale war about to break out. In Episode 3, Sisbel and the group also read the news of the Queen's near assassination, which made her very worried. So she raised the alarm to the highest level. Even a city on the outskirts of sovereign territory like this had a fairly large number of guards. The Imperial Palace was currently very dangerous, but Sisbel stubbornly wanted to return, because with her ability to see the past, Sisbel would immediately know the culprit. While everyone else was pointing suspicion at Mask, Sisbel believed he was honest because Mask would not attack so overtly. Jin also easily guessed that Sisbel was the next target of the traitor. However, she remained quite optimistic, believing that Iska's group would protect her safely. After learning about the coup in the royal palace, Alice immediately returned with a very hurried appearance. The reason Alice chose to return to the royal palace was because she believed Sisbel would be safe with Iska by her side. Although she was very sad that Isuka had to obey her younger sister, she was very happy that she had talked quite a bit with Isuka yesterday, and imagined Jin was Isuka and hugged the maid. Just then, the queen unexpectedly called Alice. She found that the palace was not attacked by traps but by astral spellcasting, so she was sure that the enemy only attacked at close range. Therefore, she could use Sisbel's astral power to find the attacker. So she really wanted Alice to quickly find her sister. However, Alice lied that she hadn't found Sisbel's whereabouts yet, so she would have to stay here for a few more days and ordered Jin to watch over Sisbel. The maid also advised Alice to be careful because she could also be a target. Sisbel informed everyone that the butler had gone to the central state and would soon have an audience with the queen tomorrow, so she hoped the group could relax and eat before going to the Imperial Palace. Just then, a sudden explosion occurred in the city, so Sisbel decided to find the culprit by summoning a spirit. However, this action inadvertently exposed Sisbel's location, so she was attacked by a stranger. Based on her hair, we could tell that the attacker was Vichy from the Hydra family. After that, Jin gave Vichy some lead bullets, but she was still able to block them with her gravity manipulation ability. Isuka immediately added another attack, destroying her hood. From that, Sisbel also realized that the enemy she was facing was actually the Hydra family, so she immediately transformed into her true form, which was a monster. This form reminded Sisbel of the monster targeting the queen that she saw when she was still at the palace. Vichy immediately launched an attack aimed at Sisbel, but was blocked by Isuka. He also ordered Mimi's group to escort Sisbel to another place, leaving this one to him. Sisbel was very worried about Isuka, because initially, she thought she only had to face the Zoa family. This Vichy was just an adopted child of the Hydra family, whose job was to judge criminals. So she knew absolutely nothing about that monster. And to ensure Sisbel's safety as much as possible, Jin decided to carry her like a princess, which embarrassed Sisbel greatly. Meanwhile, Isuka was still able to withstand Vichy's storm-like attacks, which made her wonder if the Black Steel heir of the Empire and Isuka were the same person. As soon as she finished speaking, Vichy created a magical storm to attack Isuka. But that wasn't enough to stop him. So Vichy summoned a gravity storm, creating a large explosion that attracted Alice's attention. At this moment, Alice was informed by a guard that Lady Sisbel had been found. But Alice immediately realized that it was just a fake guard. Isuka was now struggling to withstand the monster's storm-like attacks, and she decided to use her favorite black hole ultimate move to finish off Isuka. The reason Alice could recognize the fake so quickly was because she had met all the guards belonging to the Zoa family, which made him only able to argue with Alice face to face. Taking advantage of Alice's carelessness, she attacked the electrical cabinet behind them to trigger an explosion. However, Alice managed to freeze the entire surrounding environment in time, including the hotel behind, to keep the residents safe. At this point, the bodyguard was only taking a beating. But Isuka wasn't so lucky. This was his first time fighting someone who didn't use spirit power, so he was overwhelmed from beginning to end. Even though he was battered and bruised all over, Isuka kept getting up after every fall. He didn't want to lose to someone who didn't rely on spirit power, but he couldn't feel any other source of power besides spirits. Because everyone in Nebulous possessed spirit power, that's why they were hunted by the Empire. But Vichy denied that power, so Isuka simply didn't want to lose to such a fake. This made Vichy furiously attack Isuka. But this time, he knew how to use the bullets formed from her earth and rocks to get close to Vichy, and unleash the astral power of his white sword. On the ground, Alice created a giant ice pillar to punish the bodyguard, while also creating a platform for Isuka to deliver the finishing blow to Vichy. Afterwards, Vichy was captured by Jin's rock person, instead of catching the falling Isuka, who then boasted to Alice that he had just captured a monster, leaving Isuka speechless. Isuka informed Alice that Sisbel was currently being protected by his teammates, so he needed to gather with everyone. And thanks to Isuka, Alice also discovered that the mastermind behind the attack was the Hydra family. But Alice still had an important question for Isuka. Why did little Vichy strip? She thought that if she stripped, she would definitely have better electricity and water than this, making them both think she was possessed. Now everyone was safe, so Mimi took the opportunity to celebrate by ice skating, but somehow she bumped into Salinger. and the sight of a young man casually walking around in the midst of a recently fought battle made Jin suspicious. It seemed Salinger also knew Vichy's origin, and he even knew that a more terrifying monster was about to return after 30 years in the Imperial Palace. This was the first time the Queen had felt so worried in 30 years on the throne. 30 years ago, Salinger had believed she wasn't fit to be Queen because she was too naive then, not cruel enough to become a Grand Witch. But now the Queen believed that no longer mattered. Currently, she needed to fight against the Empire and do everything possible for Alice to become the next Queen. She knew that Elsha and Sisbel were also very talented, but neither was suitable to be a queen, because a queen didn't need to be strong. Whatever happened, the Liu family would still be the winner. At this moment, Mask was having a meeting with the head of the Zoa family, Growly, and it seemed he had already guessed that the Hydra family would reveal their true colors. However, Growly was still confident that his family would be the one to smile in the end. To achieve that, Mask allowed Kissing to unleash her sealed power for the upcoming throne war. On the other hand, Elsha was having a conversation with the patriarch of the Hydra family, Talisman. He praised Sisbel for having a quite powerful bodyguard. Even Vichy was beaten to a pulp, which surprised Elsha quite a bit. But she also guessed that it was Iska, the former Imperial saint. Elsha was quite dissatisfied because she was born with nothing while her sisters had everything, but that was also a way she enjoyed life. The next morning, Alice was incredibly sleepy because she had spent all night interrogating Vichy. But Jin only had to shout Imperial swordsman, and her eyes lit up as if they had never been so bright. Sisbel really wanted to know how Iska felt when facing Vichy. He didn't exactly feel scared but felt very uncomfortable fighting someone like that for the first time. Sisbel told Iska that she had seen another monster even more terrifying than Vichy before. It wasn't human. That thing was much more malicious and terrifying. And every time she mentioned that monster, Sisbel's limbs suddenly trembled, only able to lean on Iska for balance. At this point, Iska somewhat understood Sisbel's story. She had to rely on the Empire's help, and he had come all this way, so he would take her back to the Imperial Palace at all costs. Episode 4. Just returning to the palace, Alice was very surprised by the scene of destruction. Currently, Alice's presence in the palace made the Queen feel somewhat more at ease. She intended to report Vichy's situation to her mother, but she already knew that Vichy could transform into a mutated monster. However, the Hydra family denied any involvement. If so, Vichy would be the only one to take the blame, and the explosion would be a conspiracy from the Zoa family. And at this moment, mother and daughter also discovered that the butler was not present. Just then, Elsha walked into the palace with a very cunning smile. Elsha wanted someone to pick up her sister Sisbel as soon as possible, and she volunteered herself to pick up her beloved sister. After Vichy's attack the other day, coupled with the butler's disappearance, Sisbel, due to excessive worry, developed a fever. The doctor should have met the Queen by now and informed Sisbel of the safest way to return. This made Sisbel incredibly impatient. She wanted to return to the Imperial Palace as quickly as possible, even though she was bedridden with illness. But just one word of encouragement from Iska made her immediately obey her Rain brother. She would eat something to recover her health. Meanwhile, the maid was extremely frustrated because her chest hadn't developed at all in the past year. At this rate, Sisbel would quickly surpass her, let alone compare to Alice. So Jin was determined to practice this silly exercise every day to add more electricity and water, a Vietnamese idiom referring to curves. Just then, Iska called to report the situation to Jin, and she said that she was on a mission that could not fail, and when it succeeded, she could achieve Alice's destructive power, which greatly surprised Iska. Jin added that she would achieve it in the next 30 days, which worried Iska greatly because it wasn't easy to achieve power like Alice's in 30 days. Didn't Alice like Jin more at the moment? Iska was misunderstanding that Jin was using some dark magic to gain power like Alice's, while the clueless girl just wanted her 2 raspberries breasts to get a little bigger. Like, he spoke of chickens and she turned into a swan. A Vietnamese idiom meaning a complete misunderstanding. To prevent Jin from going astray, Iska decided to rush into Jin's room and found her just exercising. Therefore, this idiot immediately chased him out. At this moment, Mimi's group had prepared food for Sisbel, so Iska called her to eat. However, the girl pretended to have a heart attack to be carried out by her rain brother, and boast that her chest was bigger than Jin's. But sorry, Iska didn't want to eat government meals a second time. After going outside, Sisbal continued to pretend her hand was hurt to be fed by Iska, so he indulged her. She even asked to feed Iska, which reminded him of Alice. But Iska quickly composed himself and made her eat all the porridge. That evening, Sisbal and everyone watched the battle scene between Vichy and Iska using her spirit power. Sisbal also guessed that she not only had to face the Zoa family, but also the very cautious Hydra family. Although Elsha had asked to go pick up her sister, the Queen had forbidden her from leaving. However, Elsha decided to defy her parents' orders. Meanwhile, Alice decided to sleep with her mother to ensure the Queen's safety. Here, Alice had the opportunity to visit her mother's room and found a picture of her mother, the Queen, when she was still a princess like Alice. She also found a photo of her mother and Salinger together, as if they were very close. Back then, he was known for causing trouble for the Queen, and now he is called the Demon of Nebulous. He always tried every way to challenge the Queen to steal her astral spirit, but she didn't have Salinger arrested because she wanted a rival who could make her unleash her full power. This made Alice realize she was very similar to her mother, also having a very close rival from the Empire. However, the Queen felt that her relationship with Salinger was a mistake, because he was so power-hungry that he even attacked the previous Queen. Nevertheless, she still felt that their relationship had surpassed status, but not Pix-Urban level. It was a love story of two original, Sunday individuals that we will learn about later. At this point, she decided not to reveal more about the ending, but switched to Alice's story when she was still in the prison city. Just then, Jin called Alice to report that Sisbal had departed on a night train to return to the Central State, so the Queen decided to send more guards to protect her daughter. And when Sisbal returned tomorrow morning, all the stories would be resolved. But would it really have such a happy ending? After some travel, the group arrived at the Central State, and the bright pillar in front of them was where the Queen resided. In just a few minutes, Sisbal would reunite with the Queen's loyal attendants, so she gave the concealing patch to Mimi. But Mimi felt she couldn't accept it yet because the escort mission was not yet complete. Although this was the largest train station, there wasn't a single soul around, which made the group very suspicious. Just then, Sisbal showed great surprise because the person picking her up at the station was not her mother's attendants, but her older sister Elsha. Elsha also greeted the mercenary group behind them, but they didn't expect her to know Iska's identity as a former Imperial saint. If this news reached the Queen and the Empire, it would be a big problem. So Elsha hoped Sisbal would hand these people over to her. Elsha used this as an excuse to force Iska's group to go to the Liu family mansion for interrogation. As for Sisbal, this cunning girl used the excuse that the two sisters hadn't had a private conversation in a long time. To thank the mercenary group for protecting her sister, Elsha invited the entire group to the resort villa. But everyone knew this was a luxurious prison disguised as a supervisory villa. And Elsha admitted it too. And Sisbal couldn't return to the royal palace at this moment, because she couldn't refuse her sister's artificial invitation. At this point, the bodyguard was only taking hits. But Iska wasn't so lucky. This was his first time fighting an opponent who didn't use spirit power, so he was overwhelmed from start to finish. Even though he was bruised and battered, Iska kept getting up after every fall. He didn't want to lose to someone who didn't rely on spirit power, but he couldn't feel any other source of power besides spirits. Because everyone in Nebulous possessed spirit power, that's why they were hunted by the Empire. But Vichy denied that power, so Iska simply didn't want to lose to such a fake. This made Vichy furiously attack Iska. But this time, he knew how to use the bullets formed from her earth and rocks to close in on Vichy and unleash the astral power of his white sword. On the ground, Alice created a giant ice pillar to punish the bodyguard, while also creating a platform for Iska to deliver the finishing blow to Vichy. Afterwards, Vichy was captured by Jin's rock person, instead of catching the falling Iska, who then boasted to Alice that he had just captured a monster, leaving Iska speechless. Iska informed Alice that Sisbal was currently being protected by his teammates, so he needed to gather with everyone. And thanks to Iska, Alice also discovered that the mastermind behind the attack was the Hydra family. But Alice still had an important question for Iska. Why did little Vichy strip? She thought that if she stripped, she would definitely have better electricity and water, a Vietnamese idiom referring to curves, than this, making them both think she was possessed. Now everyone was safe. So Mimi took the opportunity to celebrate by ice skating. But somehow she bumped into Salinger. And the sight of a young man casually walking around in the midst of a recently fought battle made Jin suspicious. It seemed Salinger also knew Vichy's origin, and he even knew that a more terrifying monster was about to return after 30 years in the Imperial Palace. This was the first time the Queen had felt so worried in 30 years on the throne. 30 years ago, Salinger had believed she wasn't fit to be Queen, because she was too naive then, not cruel enough to become a Grand Witch. But now the Queen believed that no longer mattered. Currently, she needed to fight against the Empire and do everything possible for Alice to become the next Queen. She knew that Elsha and Sispel were also very talented, but neither was suitable to be a queen, because a queen didn't need to be strong. Whatever happened, the Liu family would still be the winner. At this moment, Mask was having a meeting with the head of the Zoa family, Growly, and it seemed he had already guessed that the Hydra family would reveal their true colors. However, Growly was still confident that his family would be the one to smile in the end. To achieve that, Mask allowed Kissing to unleash her sealed power for the upcoming throne war. On the other hand, Elsha was having a conversation with the patriarch of the Hydra family, Talisman. He praised Sispel for having a quite powerful bodyguard. Even Vichy was beaten to a pulp, which surprised Elsha quite a bit. But she also guessed that it was Iska, the former Imperial saint. Elsha was quite dissatisfied because she was born with nothing while her sisters had everything. But that was also a way she enjoyed life. The next morning, Alice was incredibly sleepy because she had spent all night interrogating Vichy. But Jin only had to shout Imperial swordsman, and her eyes lit up as if they had never been so bright. Sispel really wanted to know how Iska felt when facing Vichy. He didn't exactly feel scared but felt very uncomfortable fighting someone like that for the first time. Sispel told Iska that she had seen another monster, even more terrifying than Vichy before. It wasn't human. That thing was much more malicious and terrifying. And every time she mentioned that monster, Sispel's limbs suddenly trembled, only able to lean on Iska for balance. At this point, Iska somewhat understood Sispel's story. She had to rely on the Empire's help, and he had come all this way, so he would take her back to the Imperial Palace at all costs. Episode 4. Just returning to the palace, Alice was very surprised by the scene of destruction. Currently, Alice's presence in the palace made the Queen feel somewhat more at ease. She intended to report Vichy's situation to her mother, but she already knew that Vichy could transform into a mutated monster. However, the Hydra family denied any involvement. If so, Vichy would be the only one to take the blame, and the explosion would be a conspiracy from the Zoa family. And at this moment, mother and daughter also discovered that the butler was not present. Just then, Elsha walked into the palace with a very cunning smile. Elsha wanted someone to pick up her sister Sispel as soon as possible, and she volunteered herself to pick up her beloved sister. After Vichy's attack the other day, coupled with the butler's disappearance, Sispel, due to excessive worry, developed a fever. Doctor should have met the Queen by now and informed Sispel of the safest way to return. This made Sispel incredibly impatient. She wanted to return to the Imperial Palace as quickly as possible. Even though she was bedridden with illness, that just one word of encouragement from Iska made her immediately obey her Rain brother. She would eat something to recover her health. Meanwhile, the maid was extremely frustrated because her chest hadn't developed at all in the past year. At this rate, Sispel would quickly surpass her, let alone compared to Alice. So Jin was determined to practice this silly exercise every day to add more electricity and water. Just then, Iska called to report the situation to Jin, and she said that she was on a mission that could not fail, and when it succeeded, she could achieve Alice's destructive power, which greatly surprised Iska. Jin added that she would achieve it in the next 30 days, which worried Iska greatly because it wasn't easy to achieve power like Alice's in 30 days. Didn't Alice like Jin more at the moment? Iska was misunderstanding that Jin was using some dark magic to gain power like Alice's, while the clueless girl just wanted her 2 raspberries breasts to get a little bigger. Like, he spoke of chickens and she turned into a swan. To prevent Jin from going astray, Isuka decided to rush into Jin's room and found her just exercising. Therefore, this idiot immediately chased him out. At this moment, Mimi's group had prepared food for Sisbel, so Isuka called her to eat. However, the girl pretended to have a heart attack to be carried out by her Rain brother, and boast that her chest was bigger than Jin's. But sorry, Isuka didn't want to eat government meals a second time. After going outside, Sisbel continued to pretend her hand was hurt to be fed by Isuka, so he indulged her. She even asked to feed Isuka, which reminded him of Alice, but Isuka quickly composed himself and made her eat all the porridge. That evening, Sisbel and everyone watched the battle scene between Vichy and Isuka using her spirit power. Sisbel also guessed that she not only had to face the Zoa family, but also the very cautious Hydra family. Although Elsha had asked to go pick up her sister, the Queen had forbidden her from leaving. However, Elsha decided to defy her parents' orders. Meanwhile, Alice decided to sleep with her mother to ensure the Queen's safety. Here, Alice had the opportunity to visit her mother's room and found a picture of her mother, the Queen, when she was still a princess like Alice. She also found a photo of her mother and Salinger together, as if they were very close. Back then, he was known for causing trouble for the Queen, and now he is called the Demon of Nebulous. He always tried every way to challenge the Queen to steal her astral spirit, but she didn't have Salinger arrested because she wanted a rival who could make her unleash her full power. This made Alice realize she was very similar to her mother, also having a very close rival from the Empire. However, the Queen felt that her relationship with Salinger was a mistake because he was so power-hungry that he even attacked the previous Queen. Nevertheless, she still felt that their relationship had surpassed status, but not Pix-Urban level. It was a love story of two original, Sunday individuals that we will learn about later. At this point, she decided not to reveal more about the ending, but switched to Alice's story when she was still in the prison city. Then, Jin called Alice to report that Sisbel had departed on a night train to return to the central state, so the Queen decided to send more guards to protect her daughter. And when Sisbel returned tomorrow morning, all the stories would be resolved. But would it really have such a happy ending? After some travel, the group arrived at the central state, and the bright pillar in front of them was where the Queen resided. In just a few minutes, Sisbel would reunite with the Queen's loyal attendants, so she gave the concealing patch to Mimi. But Mimi felt she couldn't accept it yet because the escort mission was not yet complete. Although this was the largest train station, there wasn't a single soul around, which made the group very suspicious. Just then, Sisbel showed great surprise because the person picking her up at the station was not her mother's attendants, but her older sister Elsha. Elsha also greeted the mercenary group behind them, but they didn't expect her to know Isuka's identity as a former Imperial saint. If this news reached the Queen and the Empire, it would be a big problem. So Elsha hoped Sisbel would hand these people over to her. Elsha used this as an excuse to force Isuka's group to go to the Liu family mansion for interrogation. As for Sisbel, this cunning girl used the excuse that the two sisters hadn't had a private conversation in a long time. To thank the mercenary group for protecting her sister, Elsha invited the entire group to the resort villa. But everyone knew this was a luxurious prison disguised as a supervisory villa. And Elsha admitted it too. And Sisbel couldn't return to the royal palace at this moment, because she couldn't refuse her sister's artificial invitation. However, Elsha didn't expect that Jin was always following everyone and reporting this to Alice. Therefore, the Queen ordered Alice to immediately go to the Liu family mansion and protect Sisbel back to the palace at all costs. She also reminded Alice to treat the mercenaries well because they were foreigners. This made Alice extremely worried because there was a secret closet in Alice's room. If Isuka happened to stop by there, he would discover that she had some skimpy underwear. He would judge her as an indecent girl, so Alice absolutely would not let him see it. She promised her mother that she would protect her secret at all costs. Oops, she meant protect Sisbel, which confused her mother a little. Before leaving, the Queen gave Alice one final instruction. At this time next year, Alice would replace her as the new Queen. Meanwhile, the Empire Saints had easily infiltrated the sovereign border, signaling an impending holy war. 4 targets were prioritized: the Nebulous Queen, the head of the Zoa family, and the two princesses kissing and Alice. Currently, 2 of the 7 saints had infiltrated the central state, namely Nameless and May. And in the eyes of the saints, they viewed this attack as a witch hunt. The Imperial Palace was divided into 4 large areas, with the impenetrable fortress in the very center. The 3 towers next to it were the garrisons of the 3 royal families. However, the Empire's targets were only the Liu family and the Zoa family, so it was easy to guess that the family colluding with the Empire was the Hydra family. And the Hydra family was connected to Elsha, so she was also a traitor. Rhea warned G.I. Joe to be careful when confronting the Queen, because she also had the Ice Witch Alice by her side. But he believed that currently, only the Queen was inside the palace. This might be the Empire's biggest witch hunt ever. Episode 5. On the way to the Liu family mansion, the group passed through vast fields, but it turned out to be just Sisbel's family garden. After some travel, in front of the group was an extremely large mansion, looking like a magnificent castle. As soon as they stepped inside, Mask's voice suddenly echoed, making the entire group get into a fighting stance. But Sisbel immediately realized this was her sister's trick, because Elsha had the ability to mimic voices. Elsha's spirit spell allowed her to imitate others' voices, and Elsha felt it was useless because it couldn't even hurt a newborn baby. And with such a domineering voice imitation ability, it was highly likely that Elsha had imitated Mask's voice to attack the Queen. Afterwards, Elsha also summoned the servants to serve Iska's group and Sisbel, hoping everyone could relax because their spirits couldn't attack. Moreover, no one had the time to be both a maid and a bodyguard except Jin. Speaking of Jin, Iska guessed that she was always monitoring everyone under Alice's orders, so it was very likely that Alice would also be here. However, to stay at the Liu family mansion, everyone had to hand over their weapons to the maids. Elsha also forbade the maids from putting anything in the Imperial soldiers' food, which looked like she was showing them what to do. Even though Sisbel guaranteed their safety, Iska still thoroughly checked his room. And Sisbel also helped Iska check inside the room for any listening devices. Initially, Iska even thought Elsha's spirit could record, but according to Sisbel, her sister could only imitate the voices of people she had heard before. Then she led Iska to look for listening devices, but it was actually an opportunity to show her Rain brother around the house. In front of Sisbel's room hung a self-portrait that looked like a photograph. Elsha's room was similar. Although she possessed many degrees and speaking talents, Elsha would not inherit the throne because her spirit ability was too weak. Therefore, Sisbel felt this sister was very scary because she could devise many schemes to seize power. Since they couldn't enter Elsha's room, she decided to take Iska to Alice's room, and in front of Alice's room hung a portrait painted by her own hand. So beautiful it amazed even demons. Then the two entered Alice's room. Since it was next to Sisbel's room, she suggested checking it more carefully because her sister might be eavesdropping on their conversation. She even casually jumped into Alice's bedroom and rummaged through everything as if it were her own room. Iska was asked by Sisbel to hold these items just as Alice walked into the room. Therefore, Alice ordered both of them to forget everything they had just seen, if they didn't want to be turned into ice sculptures in a museum. Jin had just returned to the mansion and saw the two enemies, sitting remorsefully in front of Alice. She advised her sister to immediately return to the Imperial Palace, because their mother was waiting. Just as her sister Elsha walked in, Alice also advised her to quickly return. And even more surprisingly, Elsha agreed to return to the palace tomorrow, and even thoughtfully prepared a party for everyone tonight. At dinner, Elsha introduced her second sister, Alice, to Iska's group, because in everyone's eyes, it was as if they had never known each other. Suddenly, Mimi remembered Alice's face, but before she could speak, Jin sent her to beg to protect the secret of the other two. After dinner, Jin forbade Mimi from revealing that Alice was the second princess of Nebulous. And Sisbel also forbade her from mentioning her princess identity, because, in reality, besides Iska, the group still didn't know the true identities of the three sisters, which made Mimi only cry out in shock at this earth-shattering truth. That night, Alice didn't understand why her sister Elsha left Sisbel in the villa. She truly didn't understand her sister's intentions, so she decided to stay here to protect Sisbel. And there was another purpose. Iska also guessed that the purpose Alice just mentioned was to supervise the Imperial soldiers, so he directly stated that he would not cause trouble in the Imperial Palace. As a princess, Alice couldn't ignore this. So she wanted Iska to promise that he would absolutely not cause any obstacles to the sovereign territory or escape from the mansion. Just then, a maid came to ask permission to take Iska to meet Elsha. So Alice also forbade him from flirting with her sister. Because you're my personal rival. See, isn't that like saying, you're mine alone? When he entered Elsha's room, Iska was extremely embarrassed by her appearance. Elsha said that she had no one with similar aspirations in Nebulous. So she wanted to invite Iska to join her forces. She expressed her desire to destroy the current sovereign territory with Iska and rebuild it from scratch, which greatly surprised Iska. If this news reached the queen, Elsha would be the traitor. But the cunning woman claimed she was just joking. But he couldn't believe that Elsha also knew that Iska wanted to take a princess hostage to negotiate peace, which made him realize that this princess was colluding with the empire, because he had only told that story to a few people. It was late, so Elsha invited Iska to stay and sleep with her. Then she even showed some seductive poses to Iska, making him only cry out. Fortunately, his Rain sister Sisbel burst into her capable sister's room to catch them in the act. She declared that Elsha had no right to touch her Iska, and she even claimed that only she had the right to sleep with Iska, which made him only cry out. As the two sisters were arguing to compete for Iska, Alice suddenly appeared and joined the game. Elsha thought Alice was weak, because this was only the first time the two of them had met. But Alice argued that Iska was an Imperial soldier, so she would sleep with him to supervise him. Therefore, Elsha suggested they all sleep together, ignoring his opinion. Then the three women drew lots to see who would lie next to Iska, and Alice was the one who drew the lucky straw. Elsha was very happy, because it had been a long time since all three sisters had chatted so happily. Because after tomorrow, it would be very difficult for the three of them to face each other. That night, Iska couldn't sleep because three princesses were next to him, and so was Alice. She had forbidden Iska from touching her, even though he had been unsealed all over by her earlier. Just then, Sisbel suddenly talked in her sleep, unintentionally bringing the two of them closer. And at this distance, he could clearly hear her breathing. Alice unexpectedly touched Iska's chest. Although she had explicitly said earlier that they were forbidden to touch each other, she claimed this was just an unavoidable situation. And to be fair, Alice also wanted Iska to touch her, as Alice's only rival. The next morning, Jin noticed that Alice seemed happier than usual today. But when she saw Iska being taught golf by Sisbel, she became green with jealousy. After playing golf, Elsha unexpectedly hugged Sisbel tightly to say goodbye to her sister. At this moment, the woman also revealed the story of the butler, making Sisbel realize that the traitor was her sister, making her body tremble. And if she wanted the butler to be safe, Sisbel had to stay here quietly. At this time, Mask and the head of the Zoa family also learned that the Hydra family was the one who attacked the palace and that Elsha was the one who had imitated Mask's voice. However, Mask still didn't understand why Elsha dared to go that far. There must be some force backing her. Meanwhile, Sisbel also told the story that her sister was the mastermind behind the butler's kidnapping. Elsha had instructed Sisbel to stay here for 8 days, so only after 8 days could she return to the Imperial Palace to expose the attack. But Jin told Sisbel to be ready, because during these 8 days, Elsha might do something, and he wanted her to give orders to the whole group. Besides that, Alice also realized that both of her sisters were acting strangely. That evening, Elsha had a conversation with the queen. There, she expressed great sadness over her daughter's rivalries. She also wanted to know why Elsha had imitated Mask's voice on the day of the attack and brought Sisbel back to the mansion. She truly didn't want to believe her daughter had done this. As soon as she finished speaking, an explosion occurred, and the entire city burst into flames.